love tarot. None of these stories suck. I want to shake him. I wish he was real so I could shake him. Oh my gosh, guys, it's September already. I don't know how this happened. I don't know how 2022 went by so gosh dang quickly, but it is September. Some of us are going back to school. Some of us have kids who are going back to school. It's almost spooky season. It's fall season. I've been seeing Halloween posts everywhere, and I know everyone else is mad about it, but I'm not. Obviously, today we're doing our Tarot TBR game. We are using my Tarot of the Divine tarot card deck by Yoshi Yoshitani and my Goddess Power Oracle deck by Colette Baron-Reid. We've got some familiar faces today, and we've got some new faces today. I tried to keep the theme of the books like kind of academia, kind of spooky themed, fall themed, so this is kind of a fall themed TBR. Ish. We've got 6 stories to get through, so let's just get started. Let's bring on the books. Again, a brief overview of the rules while we do a little shuffle. 1 card equals 1 book. Pull as many cards as you feel like you want to read. I aimed to pull 4 tarot cards today, but you will see later I wind up pulling 5 because of the second rule that I am using, which is if you have 2 of the same number of the minor arcana, so like a 6 and a 6, you will pull an extra card or an extra book. That's really the gist of the game. Just pull whatever you feel like. Do whatever you want. If you want to play the game yourself, I have my rules linked in the Google Doc down below in the description, and let's get started. So the first card that we pulled is a new one. This is the 5 of Coins. What is represented here is one of Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales and a sad one. This is the Little Match Girl. I want to set the stage for this one. It is New Year's Eve in like 1800s Victorian England. We are on cobblestone streets. There's snow coming down. It is cold. And there is a little girl walking around without any shoes on. She's carrying a huge bunch of matches in her skirt and in her hands to sell, but no one bought them that day. She knew she couldn't go home because her father would beat her for not making any money, and she would still be cold at home, so it doesn't really matter if she went home or not. She decides to crouch by a wall and takes a single match to warm her hand. And when it's lit, the little girl sees in front of her a beautiful iron stove that warms her whole body. And then the match goes out and the image disappears. So she rubs another match against the wall, and instead, where the light fell, she sees a snow white tablecloth with a roast goose on it. Again, the light goes out and the world was dark. A third match, and she is sitting under a massive Christmas tree full of lights. When the match went out, the lights become stars in the night sky, and one star falls, forming a trail of fire. The little girl knew in that moment that her grandmother, the only person who had loved her, had died. So the girl struck a 4th match, and before her stood her grandmother, radiant and beautiful. And the girl said, "Grandmother, take me with you. You'll disappear when the match burns out." And she strikes every match she has against the wall to try and keep her grandmother's image in front of her. The grandmother took the child in her arms and flew up into the brightness above, where they would live without cold or hunger or anxiety. However, when dawn came up in the street, the little girl sat leaning against the wall, frozen, but still holding her matches. That's a sad one. As you may have guessed, the card, the 5 of Coins, this is a card of financial loss or poverty. Perhaps you feel like you don't have enough or that you might lose something important to you. This card is reminding you to reach out to others for support and redirect your attention to what you have now to avoid manifesting like the negative future that you're imagining. The prompt that I have for 5 cards is a book over 500 pages, and for, what is this, coin cards? For coin cards, it is something tense or funny, and so I picked our first spooky read of the bunch, and that is Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. This is a sapphic horror story, amazing, starting in 1902, where Flo and Clara, 2 young students at a boarding school, are obsessed with this woman, Mary McLean, who wrote a scandalous memoir. They start their own private club called the Plain Bad Heroine Society, and meet in a nearby apple orchard where their bodies are eventually found stung to death by wasps. After 3 more mysterious deaths, the school closes down, and 100 years later, the school is reopening as the set of a film adaptation based off the events that happened with Flo and Clara. And we have 3 leading ladies who show up in this like creepy boarding school, and things start to happen. Horrible things. This feels like a book for me. I like to scroll through reviews sometimes, especially with horror books, just to see if there's like anything triggering in there that I should be aware of. In this one, there were a couple reviews that are like, this book just isn't for me. And the way that they were describing it makes it feel like it's a book for me. It's very feminist, it's got views on Hollywood and on religion, and it's a horror, and it's a ghost story, and it's kind of gothic, set in this like gothic boarding school. This is another book that I discovered on that Talking Scared podcast that I've just been obnoxiously sharing as often as humanly possible with you all. When Emily Danforth came on to speak about it, they just had such a lovely conversation about queerness and expectations of women and all of those kinds of things. And it just makes me really excited to read a story like this. I just love... give me feminist literature. So I think that's going to be a really fun one to read this September to like get me excited for spooky season. So that is the book that I picked for the 5 of Coins. The next card that I pulled is one we've seen before and a very fun one. This is The Legend of the Watermelon. This is the story of how the watermelon came to Vietnam. There's a variety of versions, and last time we talked about the version where the king exiles our hero My Antiem for being basically pretentious about some food. This version instead is about My Antiem's jealous brother. Our hero, My Antiem, was found washed up on the shore of Vietnam during a terrible storm. A fisherwoman found him and took him to the king, who decided to adopt him instead of, looking for his parents. But that's fine. As he grew up, this boy was incredibly smart and very popular. Many of the king's counselors consulted him for actual decisions about the kingdom. He was just really wise beyond his years. He quickly became the king's favorite, and when he turned 20, the king arranged for him to marry one of his daughters, Princess Koba, and they held a celebration unlike any seen before in the kingdom. Now, My Antiem's brother, Prince Hao, grew jealous that he didn't get as big of a celebration for his wedding, and he suspected that the king wanted My Antiem for his heir instead of Prince Hao. Hao starts spreading rumors that My Antiem was going to start a coup. Now, as rumors happen, they spread so far that people just started to believe them as fact. The king had no choice but to exile My Antiem. Princess Koba swore that she would follow him, and they board a ship together and are deposited on a desert island. They lived there for a few years, fed and sheltered, but not living the high life by any means. And the princess, understandably missed some of the delicacies of court. One day, My Antiem found some birds squawking around some black seeds and just plants them out of curiosity. Many months later, he noticed they were starting to grow into enormous green fruits, the lovely watermelon. And they were unlike anything the two of them had ever tasted. It was the couple's first actual treat after 7 years. As in the other version we talked about, My Antiem carved his name into one of the watermelons and throws it into the ocean for funsies, and it carries the watermelon back to Vietnam. It was brought to the king. Obviously he recognized the name. He tried the watermelon, decided it was the greatest present ever to be bestowed upon any king ever. We love the hyperbole. In his heart, he forgave My Antiem and sent a boat to bring him and Koba back to Vietnam. Eventually, My Antiem did become king. I don't know where Prince Hao went. Where did he go? I don't know. I don't know what happened to him. And he ruled wisely until the end of his days. The card, the 9 of Coins, this represents success, hard work, and independence. So when it appears in a spread, you can finally enjoy the fruits of your labor. I'm sorry. I know I made that joke in the first time we did this. I just think it's funny. Give yourself a reward or a treat to celebrate your journey. It's a good, happy card. So the prompt that I have for this card is the next book in a series for Coins Again, Tense or Funny. And so literally last week I was wouldn't it be nice if I could continue the Locked Tomb trilogy? Well, we're gonna continue it, friends. Harrow the Ninth by Tamsin Muir is the book that I picked for this card. This is the second Locked Tomb book that follows Harrow Hark Nona Jessimus, which is the best name ever given to a character anywhere. You can't change my mind. She is the last necromancer of the 9th house and is working to fight an unwinnable war for her empire. It's necromancers in space. It's gory. It's hilarious. It's chaotic. I hope that it continues to be as chaotic as the first one, because the first one was just so fun. That is the book that I picked for the 9 of Coins. The next card that I pulled is also one we've seen before. This is the 6 of Cups. Represented here is the Snow Queen. So this is a Danish fairy tale about an evil wizard and his magical mirror that turns beautiful things into rotten things. After he accidentally smashes the mirror, the shards blow all over the land, and if a shard happens to stab you in the eye, you would only see the evil in people. This happened to a young boy named Kai, and after the shard got him, He stomped all over his best friend's garden, told her he never wanted to play with her again, and ran out onto the street with his sled. A woman on a white sleigh passed him, and he hooked his sled to the back of it so he could get away from his home even faster. The sleigh was driven by the evil Snow Queen, and once she knew that he would die of the cold, she made it so he would not feel cold, would forget Gerda, his friend, and his family, and was under her spell, taking him to her snow castle. She put him to work on a frozen lake, turning pieces of ice into words and numbers, unclear as to why. And while this was happening, Gerda, the deer, was looking for Kai when he didn't come home. She goes on a classic fairy tale journey that we're used to, getting advice from everybody from witches to crows to deer, and eventually discovers Kai on the lake. He didn't recognize Gerda, and Gerda cried so hard at the loss of her friend that the water ran into Kai's eyes and washed the glass from it. They both cried together, escaped the Snow Queen, and ran home. Kind of ominous to me that the shards of this glass are just like still wandering around, flowing around, hitting people in the eyes. He didn't really resolve anything here. The card, the Six of Cups, this is a card of innocence, joy, and happy memories, and it shows an increased level of harmony in your relationships, and it's reminding you to take the time to have fun like a kid again. The prompt that I have for 6 cards is a book under 300 pages, and for cups, something emotional or sad. And so I picked a book that I've had multiple people recommend to me in the last month. This is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. So this is a sci-fi set in a world where robots gained self-awareness, stopped working for all the humans, and then disappeared into the wilderness. And this story starts when a robot appears before a tea monk needing to answer the question, what do people need? And he can't leave until the question is answered. Now, as someone who hates robots, I just have a thing with AI. I just have a thing with robots. I grew up watching like Meet the Robinsons. There's not a lot you can do about it. I know it's supposed to be wonderful and emotional and moving and like truly is like a beautiful piece of writing. So I'm very curious to see how I feel about it because I hate robots. That is the book that I picked for the Six of Cups. The next card that I pulled in the spread was the Six of Swords, which is also a new one. This is Danae and Perseus from Greek mythology. Danae was the only daughter of Acrisios, and as he wanted a son, he consulted the Delphic oracle to figure out how he could do that. The oracle, as is typical in a lot of Greek myths, tells Acrisios that if his daughter married, she would have a son that would eventually kill him. So as a way to keep Danae from getting married, he locked her up in his dungeon. One day, obviously months later, which suggests that he just didn't visit his daughter for like at least a year, Acrisios goes to visit Danae and finds her with a son, with a baby. Some said that the father was Zeus, who came through the keyhole in her cell in the form of golden rain. Others said it was Acrisios' twin brother Proitos, so Danae's uncle, who had bribed the guards and made up the story. I think the second one is probably more likely. Either way, poor Danae. But to make matters worse, because men in these stories suck, Acrisios decides to lock Danae and Perseus into a box and throw them into the Aegean Sea to die. However, as is wont to happen in Greek stories, they wash up on the island of Seriphos and were found by a fisherman who, upon opening the box, immediately fell in love with Danae, raising Perseus as his own. The bar. Now, Perseus grows up, has all of his own little adventures, killing Medusa, who was also fucked over by Zeus, marries Andromeda, and eventually heads to Argos to hang out with his grandpa Acrisios. Except Acrisios has disappeared, obviously, because Perseus is supposed to kill him and is literally like wandering around Greece, turning whole armies to stone with Medusa's head, which like disrespecting the dead much. I have very strong feelings about Medusa. Acrisios leaves. He moves to Larissa under an assumed name. So Perseus just takes over the Argos kingship because the king is nowhere to be found, and a few years later goes up to Larissa to compete in some athletic games. Perseus had invented discus throwing and was showing off, threw the discus a little far, a little wild, and it hits Acrisios on the foot and kills him instantly. This is obviously the super short version of the story. Danae and the fisherman are able to like get married after this, I think. I'll double check that. The Six of Swords shows up when you are in the middle of a transition that is going to be essential for your growth and development. So, like me going back to school after a year-long hiatus. Woo, we love tarot. This card is suggesting that you reflect on any baggage you might be carrying into this next period and determine what you want to take with you. So basically, like, do some personal reflection before you get started on this next step. The prompt, again, for 6 cards, under 300 pages. For swords, something informative or challenging. And so I picked, this is the book that's been on my list for a very long time. This is Trust Exercise by Susan Choi. This is about two freshmen in a performing arts high school in the 80s who fall hopelessly in young love with each other and are manipulated within this relationship by their acting teacher, Mr. Kingsley. What we believe to have happened within their relationship is not true, and we won't know what has actually occurred until the end of the book. So it's a story about like manipulation and adults' interference with children, which I think is a really interesting concept. I'm really curious to see how this is done. That's it. I'm just curious to see how it's done. I'm excited for it. And it's a book about high school. It's a book about school. So like that's kind of academia focused. That's the book that I picked for the Six of Swords. Last tarot card that I pulled is one we've seen quite a lot. This is the Queen of Wands. This is probably our most pulled card in this TBR game, and this is Pele. Pele is a Hawaiian goddess of fire and volcanoes and the creator of the Hawaiian Islands. There are a bunch of different stories detailing how she showed up in Hawaii. One of them saying she borrowed a canoe from her brother, another that she was chased by her sister Nama Kaukahai because of an illicit affair with Nama's husband that resulted in Nama literally ripping her sister to shreds and throwing her around the Hawaiian Islands. I want to talk about a different rival of Pele, Poliahu, who is the goddess of snow. Poliahu was sledding with her friends, and Pele just like appears as a beautiful stranger. Pele becomes jealous of the goddess, perhaps of being able to enjoy the snow. I don't think a fire goddess probably enjoys like running around in the snow that much, and throws fireballs, like straight up fireballs at Poliahu while the snow goddess runs back up the mountain to escape. Poliahu grabs her snow mantle, which is like a cape, and throws it over the mountain, chilling and hardening the lava and pushing the lava away from the northern area of the island. To this day, it is believed that the snow goddesses have supremacy of the northern portion of the island, while Pele has supremacy in the south. The card, the Queen of Wands, she is upbeat and determined and is telling you to be the same. Be friendly, be optimistic, and take time to make connections with others. The prompt that I have for Queen cards is a female author. For Wands, something adventurous or inspiring. Y'all know where this is going. Obviously, we are reading Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. This is the first book in the second trilogy in the Realm of the Elderlings series. Instead of following Fitz in this book like we are in the Farseer trilogy, Ship of Magic is about live ships that are created from some magical wizard wood that quicken, whatever that means, when 3 members of successive generations have died on board. We've got a lot of rules with this magic system. One ship is about to be quickened when Althea learns that this ship, her ship, has been signed over to her horrible brother-in-law. She is not the only character that we're following. We're following a few different ships. It's in third person instead of first person like the Farseer trilogy. And I think it's going to be a good time. She might be my new favorite fantasy author. I just absolutely love the way that she weaves stories together. I'm so excited to see her try out third person instead of the first person that we're used to with Fitz, and like get to experience some different characters, because Fitz makes me want to strangle him. I want to shake him. I wish he was real so I could shake him for being stupid. Anyway, it'll be nice to have a little break from the chaos that is Fitz. I'm so excited to read this. So that's the book that I picked for our final tarot card. And then I, of course, pulled an oracle card. So I'll give myself a second to do a little shuffle. I started adding an oracle card to this a couple months ago. I think it's really fun to add a feminine goddess into our lineup, and these cards are so gorgeous. I just want to show them off. The lovely goddess that I wound up pulling from this deck is Maya, who is the goddess of illusion. Maya appears in Hindu, Buddhist, Greco-Roman, and Scandinavian spiritual myths, and basically has the power to coat all beings, gods and humans alike, with delusion that she alone can remove. And this delusion is how both gods and mortals think themselves to become distinct individuals. It is like the source of difference, which is basically suggesting that like we are all the same as other people. It is this delusion put onto us by the goddess Maya to make our lives like different and interesting, that make us feel distinct. So Maya is an attractive, enigmatic presence, who basically interests gods who are bored with their eternity. She offers them a complete escape from their responsibilities of divinity and basically puts everyone into a realm of sexual pleasure. So she's a whole mood. In this deck, when Maya appears, the idea is that she is removing illusion from your path so that you can see the truth. Your clarity is heightened, and she is encouraging you to trust the world to put you on the right path. So obviously, again, I don't have prompts for the oracle cards, but I was looking for a book about illusions, piercing through the illusions, working on seeing the truth, and I found the perfect one that applies both to me going back to school and to this idea of illusion. It is Trickster Drift by Eden Robinson. So this is the second book in her Trickster trilogy that follows Jared, who is the son of a trickster and a witch. In this book, he is headed to Vancouver for school and has quit drugs and drinking as a way to keep all forms of magic like away from him. But he's dealing with a lot of things. He's dealing with the temptation to drink, trying to keep his grades up, his mom's abusive ex who is stalking him, and of course, monsters in the walls. This just felt perfect to me. Like, it's literally about peering through like the walls of reality and seeing the magical, like, real creatures that only people with magic can see. The first book ended on such a fun, dark note, and so I'm excited to see this book kind of build upon that to take us into spooky season. If you guys are looking for more book reviews, stay tuned for next week. I'm going to be posting my whole summer wrap-up, everything I've been reading from June through August. I have been reading some, like, truly incredible books, like all-time favorites in the last few months, and I can't wait to talk about them with you guys. I realized this month that I haven't been doing monthly wrap-ups at all this year. I don't know why that happened. They're coming back. I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day. Happy reading. Tell me what you're reading in September or what you've been reading. Have you enjoyed any of these books? Let me know. Stay hydrated in this hot, hot summer. I will see you all next week with my summer wrap-up.